For 20 years, my parents slept in separate rooms, different floors of the same little house. My father in the back room by the furnace, with a narrow bed and a door he always kept shut. My mother upstairs, behind a door she always left open just a crack. As a boy, I was sure of one thing. They hated each other. They barely spoke at dinner. They never held hands, never danced, never once kissed where I could see it. And I spent most of my life quietly ashamed of the cold, silent marriage I thought I came from. And quietly terrified that, one day, I would end up living in a house just as silent. Then, 3 weeks after we buried my mother, I was cleaning out her closet when I found a diary in a shoebox at the very top, hidden behind her winter coats. And everything I believed about love turned out to be wrong. Everything. If you've ever looked at two people and decided you already knew their whole story, stay with me. Because by the end of this, you may never look at a quiet marriage or a quiet person the same way again. I have carried this for 40 years, and tonight, I'm finally going to tell it the way it deserves to be told. I'm going to tell you 3 things. First, what it was really like growing up in that silent house on the east side of Youngstown, Ohio. And why I was so certain my parents were 2 strangers who simply shared a roof and a last name. Second, what my mother wrote on those pages. The secret my father carried home from a war that nobody in our house was ever allowed to talk about. And third, the one lesson I wish to God I'd learned 40 years sooner. The lesson your own family is probably waiting, right now, to hand you, if you'll only sit down and ask before it's gone. We lived on a narrow street where every house looked the same, and every father came home tired. Mine came home quieter than most. Dad worked the mills. 30 years of heat and steel, and when his shift ended, he didn't sit with us. He'd wash the soot off his hands at the kitchen sink, eat fast, say almost nothing, and go down to the back room with the small bed, the old radio, and that closed door. My mother kept the upstairs room with the good quilt, and the window over the yard. I cannot remember a single night, in 20 years, that they slept under the same blanket. Children fill silence with their own stories. And the story I told myself was simple. They don't love each other. They only stay together because that's what people did back then. You didn't leave. You endured. I'd go to my friend Danny's house and watch his parents dance to the radio while they did the dishes, laughing at nothing, and I'd burn with an envy I never said out loud. I promised myself, right there in that kitchen, that I would never have a marriage like my parents. 2 polite strangers passing in a hallway, saying, "Excuse me." But there were small things I could never explain. Every single morning, before the sun was even up, my father left a folded note on the kitchen table. I thought they were grocery lists or reminders about the car. My mother never read them in front of us. She'd just slip them into her apron pocket, quiet as a prayer, and go on making breakfast. And every night I'd hear him climb the stairs once. Only once. Stop outside her door for a moment, and go back down. I thought he was checking the locks. I was a boy. I thought I understood everything. I understood nothing. My mother outlived my father by 9 years. When she finally passed, it fell to me, the only son still close by, to clean out the house I grew up in. On the top shelf of her closet, behind the winter coats that still smelled like her, there was that shoebox. Inside were just two things: a thick stack of small folded notes, tied with kitchen string gone soft with age, and a diary with a worn, faded cover I had never once seen in my life. I sat down on the floor of that empty bedroom, in the quiet, and I started to read. And page after page, the cold marriage I thought I knew came apart in my hands. My father shipped out to Korea in 1951. He came home in 1953, a different man. Though nobody back then had the words we use now. They just called it nerves and told him to be grateful he made it home at all. At night, my mother wrote, he didn't sleep so much as fight. He'd thrash and shout and wake with his own hands at his throat, the sheets soaked through, not knowing where he was or who she was. The first year they were married, he woke one night swinging and caught her hard across the cheek before he ever opened his eyes. He saw the bruise the next morning. He didn't speak a word for 3 days. And then, without a single argument, he quietly carried his pillow and his things down to the back room. He didn't leave her. He moved away from her to keep her safe, terrified that one night the war still living inside him would hurt the one person he had crossed an ocean to come home to. And here is the part that broke me. My mother understood. That was the real secret of the whole house. She wrote that every night, after he'd finally fallen asleep, she would carry her pillow to the top stair, sit down by his door, and just listen. Listen until his breathing went slow and even, so she'd know the nightmare had passed. That's why her door always stayed open a crack, not distance, so she could hear him. And those folded notes I'd mistaken for grocery lists? She had saved every single one of them. 20 years of mornings, bound in string. I sat there and untied it and read them, one by one. Coffee's hot. Watch the porch step. It iced over. Dreamed of you last night instead of the war. First good sleep in years. 26 years. And I'd marry you again tomorrow. Sorry about the noise. Thank you for staying. My father. The cold, distant, silent man I had pitied and resented my whole life, had been writing my mother a love letter every morning for 20 years. And she had kept every one. I'm an old man now. Older tonight than my father ever got to be. And I've had a long, long time to think about what those pages taught me. So let me hand it to you plainly, the way I wish to God someone had handed it to me at 25. First, never believe you know the whole story of someone's marriage, or their struggle, or their life, from the outside. What I had judged as coldness for 40 years was, in truth, the loudest and bravest love in that whole town. Distance can be devotion. Silence can be sacrifice. So if you ever catch yourself judging how two people love each other, stop. You are reading one page of a book you were never handed. Second, the love that actually lasts is almost never the dancing in the kitchen. I wasted years of my life wishing for the wrong thing. Real love. The kind that holds a person steady for 50 years. Is mostly small, and daily, and unglamorous, and nobody ever claps for it. It's the hot coffee, the folded note, the door left open a crack. It is one human being choosing the comfort and safety of another, over and over, on ordinary gray mornings when no one is watching, and there is nothing in it to gain. So stop waiting for the grand gesture. Go and make the small one. Today, before you forget. And third, the one that still keeps me up at night. Ask them now. My father carried his war completely alone for 40 years, because his whole generation was raised to believe that strong men stay silent and swallow it. And I let him. I never once sat down and asked him what he survived over there, or what those nights cost him. I mistook his silence for emptiness, when all along it was a wound he was protecting us from. There are people in your life right now. A father, a grandmother, an old neighbor on the porch, sitting on stories and lessons that will simply vanish the day they do. Sit down with them. Ask the hard question. Record their voice if you can. Now, I'm no doctor, and none of this is medical advice. It's only what one family lived through in a time that had no words for it. But if someone you love is quietly fighting something in the dark, please, don't do what I did and wait until it's too late. My parents slept apart for 20 years, and they were the truest, most faithful pair of lovers I have ever known. I just couldn't read the language they spoke to each other until the day it was finally written down in front of me. So here is what I'm asking you to do before you click away to the next thing. Pick one person from the generation above you. Just one. Call them this week. Not a text. Call them. Ask them one real question about their life, and then be quiet long enough to actually hear the whole answer. Don't let your shoebox stay closed until it's too late to open it. If this story moved something in you, leave one word down in the comments. The name of someone whose story you don't want to lose. I read every single one. And subscribe to Last Generation Stories, because we are saving this wisdom together before it's gone. I'll see you in the next one.